Welcome to FlightGlobal Focus, your new essential podcast for trusted aviation insight. We publish new episodes twice weekly. Join us on Friday for a concise news briefing and on Monday for in-depth analysis covering airlines, defense, and aerospace. My name is Amber Elias, and joining me for this News Focus episode are FlightGlobal's John Hemmerdinger and Howard Hardee, on the ground in Las Vegas at the NBAA Business Aviation Trade Show. John, Howard, welcome to this episode.
Hi, Amber. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Let's take a look at the top aviation stories this week on FlightGlobal. Chinese airlines are protesting the proposed rule banning flights to and from the USA through Russian airspace. Several Chinese carriers have formally lodged objections to the US Department of Transportation. However, some major US operators have shown support for the measure and urged an even broader response. Rolls-Royce has completed all the certification testing for its developmental Pearl 10X engine and is now working to submit the required reports to the European regulator. However, the company declines to speculate on when it might finalize those reports or obtain certification from the European Union Aviation Safety Agency for the engine, which will power the Dassault Aviation Falcon 10X. Bombardier has increased the planned maximum operating speed of its Global 8000 business jet to Mach 0.95, slightly faster than previously intended, as the company prepares for certification this year. The tweak, which Bombardier unveiled ahead of the NBAA show, sets a new benchmark for speed, says the company chief executive. John and Howard, you're both on the ground in Las Vegas at the NBAA show this year. What is the big news coming out of the show?
Yeah, Amber, the show is interesting for a number of reasons, but one of them is that this year Gulfstream returned to NBAA. They hadn't been here in quite a few years. They had been absent, and this year they're back. And just a couple weeks ago, they announced development of an aircraft called the G300. It's a new aircraft, but it's also based on their previous G280, and it replaces the 280. So they have this new aircraft coming along, and they're also here with several other aircraft out at the static display, sort of making a return and making a big deal out of what they call a complete modernization of their fleet. Now, with the G300 certified, which hasn't happened yet, but when that's done, they will have updated their entire fleet. So we'll have the G300, the G400, the 500, and the all-new 700 and 800. 800 is their longest range aircraft. It's sister ship to the G700. So they're making a big deal out of having a completely modern fleet this year.
Yeah. Elsewhere in business aviation world, Textron Aviation made its major airshow debut with the Cessna Citation Ascend, which is one of their light business jets. It's a variant of one of their older XL models. They flew that into Henderson Executive Airport on Monday morning and made a pretty big splash on the first day of the show.
Howard, I think also, I know you wrote about this, there was some movement on the eVTOL front. Am I right about that? Something involving Archer, I think?
Yeah, absolutely. So Archer Aviation made big news at the show because they acquired the patent portfolio of Lilium, which followed a competitive bidding process between Archer and its primary rival, Joby Aviation. This is a big deal for a few reasons. First of all, it seems to sort of stick a fork in the Lilium saga, as there have been several attempts to revive the company after it became insolvent last year. Secondly, it's a big win for Archer. They got their hands on Lilium's ducted fan technology in particular, which is considered quite advanced. It also keeps Lilium's technology out of the hands of Joby, which arguably may have been Archer's primary motivation in making its winning $18 million bid. And finally, this is also potentially a sign that we're going to see further consolidation of air taxi developers. Analysts have been saying for years that only a couple players will be left standing with a market product. This could be viewed as a sign that those predictions are coming true.
John, you've covered the new fractional firm Bond, which has emerged at NBAA this year with a 50-strong order from Bombardier for business jets. What has that meant for the show this year?
Yeah, that was big news at the show, Amber. And it was earlier this year that Bombardier announced that they had received an order for 50 Challengers and Globals, 50 total business jets between Challengers and Globals. But they hadn't said the name of the customer, and it was sort of a mystery within within the industry of who that was. And that was announced yesterday on the 14th of October out at the Static Display here in Las Vegas. And it was an incredibly, incredibly windy day, and the Static Display was closed, but Bombardier got an exception, and they held a press event anyways. And turns out that a new company has come on the scene, a new fractional aircraft ownership company. It is called Bond, B-O-N-D. It's led by an industry veteran, and pretty much they're starting from scratch with, I believe it was, I want to say $350 million of financing. I might have that number wrong. What they're going to do is a little bit unique. So first of all, fractional ownership, that business model has been doing really well in the last few years. There's hundreds of orders. Companies like NetJets and FlexJet are players in that realm, and they've ordered a lot of jets, a lot of mid-sized and smaller jets also. But this new one, Bond, says that they are only going to operate large cabin aircraft, big jets, really, and they're tailoring their business to what they call premium business aviation travelers, which I guess means the premium of the premium. And these are people who are going to travel by these ultra large cabin aircraft. So they're tackling the higher end of the market. They're going to compete against these other players, and they come in at a time of really roaring demand for fractional ownership.
What would you say has been the industry sentiment from the show this year and going into next year? Because there have seemed to be a few big announcements, both from the airframers and also the fractional firms like Bond that have come onto the scene.
I would say one thing that we're watching for, one thing we're not seeing, is where the next big aircraft platform is going to come from. We're looking around at all the airframers, kind of wondering when the next clean sheet aircraft design is going to launch. That would be a really big deal for the industry. And it's been a few years since we've seen any movement on that front. So I think what we're not seeing so far is maybe the most interesting takeaway from the show.
Right. And there's been a lot of product updates. But as Howard said, very few brand new aircraft. Embraer has talked for several years, or hinted that they might be interested in developing a large cabin jet to compete with the Globals and the Falcons and also the Gulfstreams. But that hasn't happened yet. Although, Howard, there is some indication. Well, there's one company named Otto that is making a little bit of news at the show.
Yeah, it's really kind of a striking aircraft when you're walking the exhibition hall floor at the convention center.
And it's a mock-up, Howard, right?
Yeah, it's a mock-up, so it's not a production-conforming aircraft, but really striking design that's based on a torpedo, and the thing is massive. You see pictures of it and you're like, okay, yeah, a little business jet. But then when you stand next to the mock-up, you really get a sense for the scale of the aircraft. It's really quite impressive and eye-catching.
Yeah, and Otto, OTTO, is a startup based in the U.S. And the aircraft they're trying to bring to market uses laminar flow, which is ultra efficient airflow over the aircraft. And it doesn't even have any windows. It would have video projections in the cabin. It's an interesting design that perhaps could come to market at some point. The other thing I want to mention, Amber, is that there's just a general enthusiasm in the business aviation community, at least at this show. There's a lot happening. There's some new products coming to market, like the G300. There's this new fractional ownership company. The manufacturers are ramping productions. They're still held back by shortages of products like engines, but they really are making progress. And I think maybe to a degree more than in commercial aviation, there's a sense of this sector having turned a corner and really being on the upswing at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. It does feel like there's a lot of buzz coming from this show, and we can read about it on FlightGlobal, and it seems like in the room as well. Well, thank you so much, John and Howard, from joining me live from Las Vegas at NBAA this year.
Happy to get on the program with you.
Nice to chat, Amber. Thank you.
FlightGlobal Focus is a production of FlightGlobal, with audio editing by Lucy Johnson. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, or for commercial opportunities, please email podcast@flightglobal.com, and more information can be found in the show notes. Listen, rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.